Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're diving into a world of silks and satire and some seriously unconventional ideas about pleasure. Get ready to explore The Convent of Pleasure,
Oh, yeah.
a 17th century English comedy that really kind of turns all the traditional expectations for women just right on their head.
You're in for a treat with this one. It's fascinating how this play, written like over 350 years ago, still tackles these themes that are so resonant today.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine a society where like a wealthy young woman just rejects all these suitors in traditional marriage, and then she establishes like a completely self-sufficient female-only community dedicated to, well, pleasure.
That's right. Our main character, Lady Happy, she's not waiting around for a prince to sweep her off her feet or anything. She's taking charge. She's like, I'm going to make my own destiny.
Exactly. And she lays out her whole philosophy super clearly in her opening monologue.
Yeah.
I mean, you can practically hear like the 17th century mic drop.
Yeah.
You know, when she calls men the only spoil sports. Those guys are the only ones standing in the way of women's happiness.
She doesn't mince words, does she?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, like, how audiences at the time would have reacted to such bold statements.
It definitely would have raised a couple eyebrows.
Oh, for sure.
Remember, in 17th century England, a woman's role was largely defined by her relationship to men, whether as a daughter, wife, or mother. Like, that was it. Lady Happy's Declaration of Independence is just like a direct challenge to that whole patriarchal system. You know, a system where it's just men that hold all the power and authority.
Yeah.
It's a big statement.
So she creates this convent of pleasure, almost as like a refuge from these societal constraints. What can you tell us about this unconventional community?
Think of it less like a traditional convent, you know, and more like a super luxurious retreat that's designed by and for women.
Yeah.
Not, cloistered away in prayer and contemplation or anything. These women are embracing like all of life's pleasures, delicious food, beautiful clothes, stimulating conversation, all of it.
The play really emphasizes the sensory experience of the convent, too. You get these really detailed descriptions of seasonal decorations and lavish fabrics and like just these tantalizing meals. It almost sounds like Lady Happy wanted to create a world where women can indulge every sense, experience joy in just every single aspect of their life.
And it's not just like superficial pleasures either.
Right.
The convent also stands for this space for intellectual and emotional freedom.
Oh, wow.
The women run the whole thing themselves. They have their own physicians and cooks and gardeners. I mean, they're not reliant on men for anything.
That level of self-sufficiency must have been quite radical at the time.
Oh, for sure.
It's almost like the playwright is offering a glimpse into a world where, like, traditional power structures have been completely flipped.
Absolutely. The play challenges you to, like, just really consider what a society run by women might actually look like.
Yeah.
And look, it's not all sunshine and roses, of course. There's definitely conflict, there's drama, and the play doesn't shy away from exploring, like, the complexities of female relationships either.
And what about the men in this play? How do they react to Lady Happy and her just radical experiment?
Their reactions kind of run the gamut.
Yeah.
You've got some who are just utterly bewildered, like they're just so confused by this whole rejection of traditional courtship.
Yeah.
Then there are others who resort to these really desperate and often comical attempts to try and infiltrate the convent. They just completely miss the point of the whole thing.
It sounds like the playwright is using those male characters almost to satirize the anxieties and entitlement that can come with, a patriarchal system.
Yeah.
They just can't fathom a world where women aren't constantly, like, seeking their approval or their validation.
Exactly. They become almost like cartoonish
Well,
in their
really?
cluelessness. But I think that humor really serves a purpose.
Okay.
It highlights the absurdity of like all those societal expectations.
Right.
And it forces the audience to question them both then and now.
And to really drive her point home even further, Lady Happy stages a play within a play,
Oh, yeah?
just for the convent residents.
Right.
And from what I understand, this inner play, it depicts a very different picture of what life is like outside of the convent walls.
Think of it as like a cautionary tale.
Okay.
This play showcases all the miseries that supposedly come with, a traditional marriage.
Okay.
Infidelity, financial ruin, childbirth complications, all of it. Everything that Lady Happy is trying to avoid is laid bare for the convent residents to see. Like, look, this is what you're missing.
Right. It's like this stark reminder of the potential consequences of choosing a conventional path. But does this play within a play serve any other purpose?
Yeah.
beyond just reinforcing Lady Happy's point of view?
That's a really good question. It makes you wonder if maybe the playwright is commenting on, wider societal perceptions of marriage in 17th century England.
Yeah.
Was this just like a little humorous jab at the whole institution of marriage? Or is there a deeper critique kind of woven into the narrative?
Speaking of subversive acts, the play takes an even bolder turn with the arrival of a curious princess, drawn to the convent by its unconventional reputation. What can you tell us about her?
This princess, she isn't just looking for a weekend getaway or anything.
Right.
She becomes completely captivated by Lady Happy and the freedom that the convent represents.
Yeah.
She even disguises herself as a male shepherd just to get closer to Lady Happy.
Wait, so she's going undercover to pursue this romantic relationship with Lady Happy. Now that's a twist.
Oh, yeah, big time. Not only does this choice allow her to navigate, the convent's female-only environment, but it also says a lot about just the limitations placed on women when it comes to expressing their desires.
Yeah.
Especially back then.
So this disguise, it allows her to express her feelings in a way that just wouldn't have been acceptable as a princess.
Right.
It also adds another layer to the play's exploration of societal expectations, this time focusing on romantic love and same-sex attraction.
And the play really doesn't shy away from depicting their relationship, particularly through their exchanges, which are written in this pastoral verse.
Could you explain what you mean by pastoral verse?
Oh, yeah, sure. It's a specific poetic form that often idealizes like rural life. And they use imagery from nature to explore themes of love and beauty and simplicity. The play uses this form to create this really romantic atmosphere around their relationship.
So even though the play is a comedy, it's using this unconventional romance to raise some pretty important questions about identity and desire in a society that wasn't exactly known for its, acceptance of differences.
Right. And it doesn't really provide any easy answers. It leaves you, the audience, to really grapple with the complexities of their situation and the potential consequences of defying all these societal norms. But as you might expect, this secret romance can't stay hidden forever.
Well, I bet that leads to some fireworks. What happens when the princess's true identity is revealed?
Well, let's just say it throws the entire convent into turmoil, forcing everybody to confront the consequences of their choices and the fragility of their little utopian experiment.
Oh my gosh. It sounds like the princess's revelation creates like a super dramatic turning point in the play. What's the impact on the convent and Lady Happy's vision?
It really throws everything up in the air,
Yeah.
On one hand, you've got the princess who's torn between her love for Lady Happy and like her duty to her kingdom.
Yeah.
Her disguise let her explore a side of herself that she couldn't as a princess. Now she's got to face the consequences of that exploration.
And then on the other hand, you have Lady Happy and the whole premise of the Convent of Pleasure being challenged. I mean, this whole community was founded on this idea of rejecting societal constraints.
Yeah.
And now those constraints are like coming crashing in.
Yeah, the play really makes you think, can personal happiness even exist outside of those societal expectations?
Yeah.
Or is compromise just like always inevitable? It doesn't shy away from just the messy reality of trying to create a utopia in an imperfect world.
So how does the play resolve this conflict? Does the convent just crumble under the weight of this scandal, or does Lady Happy find a way to maintain her vision?
Well, this is where the comedy really kicks in. The playwright doesn't go for a tragic downfall or anything. Things take kind of an unexpected turn with the arrival of the prince, who has finally tracked down his missing wife.
I can imagine he is not thrilled to find his princess living it up in a self-proclaimed convent of pleasure.
To say the least. But instead of this big dramatic showdown, the play takes a more lighthearted approach,
Hey.
The prince and princess, they reconcile, and get this, they decide to get married.
Hold on. So the princess just abandons Lady Happy and the convent to go back to her traditional role as a wife and future queen.
That's right. And the play doesn't really give a clear explanation for Lady Happy's reaction or her ultimate fate. We're left wondering, does she stick to her vision of this female-centric utopia, or did this whole experience just totally disillusion her?
That ambiguity is so interesting. It feels like the playwright is inviting the audience to consider all the different interpretations. Is it like a failure of Lady Happy's experiment? A necessary compromise?
Yeah.
Or something else entirely?
Exactly. It doesn't give you easy answers, It really makes you think about what success and happiness actually mean, especially in a society that constantly tries to define those things for you, for women especially.
So as we kind of reach the end of our deep dive into the Convent of Pleasure, What are some of the key takeaways that you hope our listeners will walk away with?
Okay.
What makes this play worth revisiting centuries later?
For me, it's the enduring power of female agency, even in like a historical period where women's choices were so limited, you know?
Right.
Lady Happy just dares to create a space for herself and other women to define their own lives. It's this act of defiance that's still so powerful today.
And the play doesn't just celebrate individual choice either. It also critiques all those societal norms and expectations that can limit women's opportunities for, happiness and fulfillment, whether it's through satire or romance or the sheer joy that's like depicted within the convent.
Yeah.
The play challenges those constraints in a way that just feels surprisingly relevant to like our modern world.
Absolutely. It asks us to like really question those norms,
Yeah.
and consider what a truly equitable society could actually look like. One where women are free to define pleasure and fulfillment on their own terms. And even though this play was written centuries ago, that message still carries a lot of weight today.
And let's not forget the play's exploration of same-sex attraction.
Yeah.
While it's presented within the context of a comedic play, it still manages to raise some important questions about desire and identity and societal acceptance.
Yeah, it reminds us that these themes have always been a part of the human experience.
For sure.
The play may not give us all the answers, but it definitely starts a conversation that is still relevant today. It makes you think about how far we've come, but also how much further we still have to go when it comes to, embracing diversity and challenging prejudice.
It's fascinating to think that a play written over 350 years ago can still spark such relevant discussions.
Mm.
How much do you think societal attitudes towards women's choices and desires have really changed since the 17th century?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I mean, we've obviously made some progress in terms of, legal rights and social acceptance, but the play reminds us that the fight for true equality, it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
The limitations might look a bit different today, but that underlying tension between, individual desire and societal pressure, it's still there.
And maybe that's what makes the Convent of Pleasure so enduring. It doesn't offer any like simplistic solutions or moral judgments.
Yeah.
It just presents these complex characters grappling with these real dilemmas and encourages us to think critically about our own assumptions and the world that we live in.
Exactly. And as we think about the ending of the play, that ambiguity just kind of lingers.
Right.
We're left wondering, did Lady Happy's experiment actually succeed or fail?
It's a question that each of us might answer differently depending on, our own values and experiences. It's a reminder that there's not always like a clear-cut answer when it comes to navigating all the complexities of life and society.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the point.
Maybe. The play leaves us with more questions than answers, but those questions can be really valuable. They inspire us to challenge the status quo and reimagine possibilities,
Yeah.
and just continue this conversation about creating a world where everyone has the freedom to pursue happiness and fulfillment on their own terms.
And that's a perfect segue to a final thought-provoking question for you, our listener. If a convent of pleasure were to exist in today's world, what do you think it would look like?
It's a fascinating thought experiment, isn't it? Would it be like a physical space,
Yeah.
a virtual community, or like maybe a blend of both?
Oh, that's interesting.
And like what forms of pleasure would even be prioritized,
Right.
in our world today?
It makes you wonder if the definition of pleasure would even evolve.
Oh, totally.
Because in the play, it covers such a wide spectrum. Sensory, delights, intellectual pursuits, the joy of friendship, just the freedom to make your own choices. How might those ideas translate to a 21st century context?
Maybe a modern convent of pleasure would focus on just creating a space where women can define pleasure completely on their own terms,
Right.
free from all those pressures of societal expectations.
Yeah.
It could be a place where you can challenge all those deeply ingrained notions of what it even means to be a woman and just embrace like the full spectrum of, female experiences.
It's exciting to imagine a space where women can just explore their passions without judgment,
Oh, for sure.
connect with other like-minded individuals, and just celebrate all their unique strengths and perspectives.
Maybe it would be like a hub for creativity,
Yeah.
a sanctuary for healing, or a platform for just amplifying women's voices.
Oh, wow.
It could even be a place to reclaim all these traditional feminine activities and then like reinterpret them in a way that's empowering.
And who knows, maybe you would still retain like a little touch of that mischievous, subversive spirit that Lady Happy embodies.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
After all, the pursuit of pleasure can be like a powerful force for change
Oh, yeah.
when it's done with intention and awareness.
Absolutely. Like challenging the status quo and pushing boundaries, it often starts with just asking ourselves, what
Yeah.
brings us joy?
Yeah.
What really makes us feel alive?
Hmm.
And what do we truly value? And, that can be a revolutionary act in itself.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Convent of Pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
I want to leave you, our listener, with one final thought. If you could design your own convent of pleasure, what would it look like? What kind of space would you create for yourself to really thrive and explore and experience the fullness of life?
And maybe just as importantly, how could you bring like a little touch of that convent of pleasure energy into your everyday life? What little acts of defiance or joy or self-care can you fit in, to create a world that feels a bit more liberating, a bit more fulfilling, and yeah, a bit more pleasurable.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into a world of wit and satire and these unconventional ideas. We hope that this deep dive into the convent of pleasure has sparked your curiosity and challenged your assumptions and maybe even inspired you to create your own version of a, joyful and empowering space, both within yourself and in the world around you.